Hello there. My name is Salim Javed and I'm an assistant professor at the Faculty of Mass Communication and Media Technology at SGT University. So far in different videos we have been talking about what is cinema, how it has evolved and what has been its journey. We have talked about Lumiere brothers, before him we talked about Edison, William Carradine, Laurie Dixon, their studio Black Maria, how they started making films and how because Edison did not take patent, so Lumiere brothers were able to experiment with kinetograph and how they came up with their own machine called cinematograph, and how in France films started getting made. Then there was an enthusiastic group in which Marie Césaire was there, and how he on his way to Australia took a halt in Bombay, and this is how Indians actually saw 6 films which were made by Lumiere's brothers, but it was Marie Césaire who actually brought films in India. Then we also got to know about Bhadwadekar, Hiralal Sen, then we talked about Raja Harishchandra, which was our first silent feature-length film of India. Then we talked about Baburao Painter, then we talked about J.J. Madan, J.F. Madan, and how finally on March 14, 1931, Alamara was released. Now, I have talked extensively about Alamara in the last video, and I also talked about how because of Alamara, few very unexpected changes were brought in the making of film process as a process in India. We also talked about what actually caused such a change. Like if you remember in the last video, I talked about that when Alamara was released, which was 14th March 1931, which actually had Master Bittal, Zubaida, Prithviraj, Jilubai, all these actors, and then you have De De Khuda Ke Naam Pe as the first song. The music was given by Munshi Zahir. Now, when you have a film like Alamara, what happens when you have the first talkie of India? If you remember, I also talked about Don Juan, 1927 Warner Brothers film, which actually officially ended the silent era in Hollywood, and it was Alamara, 14th March 1931, which actually officially ended the silent era in Hindi film industry. Till that there was no language specific industry. Today we say Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada film industry or Hindi film industry or Punjabi film industry, but till this time before Alamara there was no official language film kind of a thing. So it was basically Alamara with which we started it was in Hindustani Zaban. So after this we have other languages, like it's a Tamil film, it's a Malayalam film, it's a Kannada film, it's a Telugu film, or Punjabi or Bhojpuri, all these things. Now I also talked about, if you remember, that how because of Alamara, suddenly actors who were good with their performing, those who were good with their performing language through body, how they were replaced by actors, those who were doing theatre. Now suppose if I invite you to work in a film and you will be asking me what language this film speaks. So I'll say either English, Hindi or Punjabi or Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, whichever language that is. Now when this Alamara was made, there were a lot of other changes which were happening in the background, like Sulochana was replaced. So Sulochana, her real name was Ruby Meyer. She was of Jewish ancestry. So Ruby Meyer was replaced and Zubaida was brought in. If you talk about Sulochana or Ruby Meyer, she was ravishing, highest paid actress of her time, but because she did not know Hindustani, she was replaced, and this is how Zubaida came in. Now, the entire acting style till this time was very different, because it was a silent era. So it was like, if there is a Japanese film, you were able to see that because there was no dialogues. Now we were enjoying Charlie Chaplin films. There were no dialogues. We were enjoying all the situations. But when you have a film which has got a language, which has got a dialogue, and you want to enjoy that film, Now the thing is that if you know that language, you will enjoy that film more, because definitely there will be translation, but you will, maybe it depends on the quality of the translation, whether you are getting the nuance feeling that is there in the dialogue or not. So this was a problem when film came. There were no more transnational films. They were language specific film. So look, to be very honest, I am not saying that there is something wrong with Alamara. It's a perfect example that we started. This is how our silent era ended, and this is how talkies started. But you must also observe other changes that were happening simultaneously with the release of this landmark film. Now, obviously, Tanar sound system was used, which was taken care of the director himself, Adisher Irani. And making this film was a top secret priority, because a lot of other people like Madan Sahab was also trying to make one talkie film. Obviously he came second. This Alamara that I'm talking right now was the first film, first Indian film which had dialogue and music in it. Now, there were a lot of other changes happening when we are talking about Alamara. Obviously, now people get used to listening from screen. It is not that they were earlier not listening. If you remember, if you read some good research paper, you find out that there were a lot of other things happening, like if there is a silent film being projected on screen, the music troupe used to be there, not only in India but abroad also, and this is how they used to give. Audience was getting picture from screen and music from the local theatre troupe. So this is how it was happening. But technically films were silent, which were not with Alamara. Now there are a lot of other changes happening in 1930s. Now there is another very interesting film called Hunter Wali, which was released in 1935, which was a film of Wadia movie tone. Again, there was a very interesting you must be knowing that prequel and sequel is the latest thing. No, it is happening since the beginning. So Hunter Wali Ki Beti became the first sequel film of India. So Wadia movie tone, obviously, Fearless Nadia and many other films came from Wadia movie tone. So look, the films that I am incorporating in this video is some of the landmark films. It does not mean that the film that I have not included, I cannot include all the films here, so I have picked few. There are other important films also, but I am not able to include that in this presentation. Now, there were a lot of other interesting things, like this Devdas, which was released in 1935, which was P.C. Barua's, and again then it was released in 1955, which was Bimal Roy's film. Now, if you look at, now there is another film called Achut Kanya, which was released in 1936, and Himanshu Rai was the producer, Franz Osten was the director of this film. Now, if you look at all these films like Hunter Wali, especially Devdas, and after that I'll be talking about Duniya Na Mane and other films also, like Duniya Na Mane was released in 1937 and Sant Tukaram was released in 1936. Now what happens with Devdas? First of all, Devdas is a literary piece. Now this is very interesting to know, and Devdas had a rebellious theme, which was very rare of that time. Now here is what is happening, that there are one boy and a girl who are childhood friend, then the girl is married off to some wealthy family, whereas Devdas was also wealthy, but there was some equation because of which they did not get married. Now Devdas is rebellious in a sense that if I am not being married to this girl, I will not marry at all and I will destroy my life. So this is what the broad theme of Devdas is, which was made in 1935 by P.C. Barua and by 1955 by Bimal Roy. And if you look at all the adaptation, at least not less than 20 adaptation is there. The last being Sanjay Leela Bhansali's Devdas, and then Anurag Kashyap Dev D also. So this story keep coming. Now what is so unique about Devdas? If you look at Devdas, the story is fixed. There is Paro, there is Devdas, there is Chandramukhi, these three major characters, then there are other characters. But it, if you look at it on a very psychological level, it was a text which had that I will not accept the norms that has been set by society. And this was very unique in its sense, because imagine 1930s where what parents have said is everything. So there was no scope of not accepting what parents have said, and that is where this text comes and says, no, I will not disrespect you, but I will not follow what you are saying. I will not marry again. Now, if you look at this Devdas, which is being again repeated after 20 years in 1955, then keep on repeating again and again as late as 2008 or 2010. We are watching that in the form of Dev D also. Now, what is going on is with this text is that I am here to not disrespect you, but I will also do what I want to do, even if it is about destroying myself. So that is how this particular text, Devdas, and later on it becomes a film also. This struck a chord with the audience, which is like internal rebellious character which is everywhere, and this is how this film becomes a cult classic. Now again, there is this film called Achut Kanya, which is produced by Himanshu Roy and directed by Franz Austin. Now till this time we had a lot of foreign technicians who were working in so-called Hindi film industry, and we were able to afford them, and we were making some brilliant film like this Achut Kanya, which was technically superb, thematically wonderful, and had a social concern also. Here the problem of untouchability in a very romantic story is being handled. So like 1930s is absolutely a very important era when we are talking about development of Hindi film industry. Then by 1936 we have Sant Tukaram, which was Prabhat Studio Company film, which was directed by Vishnu Pant Govind Damle and Sheikh Fateh Lal, and it became the archetype of many devotional films to come. Like if there is like after Sant Tukaram, which actually got some international awards also, if you look at this trend, Sant Tukaram, sometime it is also called an era of devotional film. After this film, a lot of devotional films started coming in, and obviously when you mindlessly follow a pattern, those films tend to flop, and that is what exactly happened with many other films which came after Sant Tukaram. Now, Duniya Na Mane again is like Devdas, but in a very different way. Duniya Na Mane was released in 1937, which was Shantaram, Rajaram, Wankhede, which was directed by Wankhede. Now, you would say how Duniya Na Mane and this film Devdas is connected. I said it's about what you are telling me. I may not disrespect you, but I will not follow what you are saying. That if you see the film Duniya Na Mane, where a young girl is being married off to an old guy. Now this young girl who is like younger than the daughter of this person whom she is married to, she takes a point that, okay, by trick, forcefully I am being married to you, but you are not my husband. I will not reveal the entire story. If you get a chance to watch this film, and if you see this Devdas and Duniya Na Mane, there in Devdas it's the male protagonist who is saying, okay, fine, I am okay with what you have done, but I am not going to do it, what you are asking me to do. And Duniya Na Mane is also the same film, but here in Duniya Na Mane it's the female character who is in lead. Now this is very interesting to know that by this time, 1930s, 1940s, up to 1950s also, technically up till 1960 also, you have strong female characters. It is through 1970 onwards only when we started having weak female characters. I'll discuss about that also. Now this is how that I have drawn a comparison between Devdas, which is 1935, and Duriya Narmane, which is 1937. Then you have Kisan Kanya, again by Adesher Irani. If you remember, we were talking about Alamara. Now, Adesher Irani as a producer has got another feather in his cap, which is making the first color film of India, which is Kisan Kanya, which was released in 1935. So, Alamara, director Adesher Irani, this Kisan Kanya, Adesher Irani is the producer, okay, which was directed by Moti B. Gidwani. He was the director of Kisan Kanya. So both the films, Alamara and Kisan Kanya, Adesher Irani is connected. At one place he is the director, at another place he is the producer. But these first talkie film and first colorful film, both the credit is with Adesher Irani. Now, another very interesting thing, another very important film, like from 1937 I am jumping on to 1946, which is like Neecha Nagar. I am talking about a film called Neecha Nagar. Now, Neecha Nagar is Chetan Anand's film, which is the first film of India to get Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival. I happened to see Neecha Nagar. The print was not very good. It is available on social media platforms. If you get a chance to see this film, you must see this film. It's like some of the frame was amazing. Like I have seen a lot of good films from this era from Hollywood. And if you look at the framing of Neecha Nagar, oh my God, they are fantastic. Obviously, you will find it more theatrical, because that was the way in which people were performing at that point of time. In 1950, it was changed. I'll tell you how it was changed. Now, when you look at Neecha Nagar, you will find it very theatrical, but frames are superb. Now, what is happening is, why I'm saying you will find it more theatrical. Now, there is a reason. If you remember, when I was talking about Alamara, and I said actors who were, very good performing with their body. Like suppose, if you remember, I gave you an example. I said, like in silent era, if you have to be scared, now you will say you will react something like this, and this reaction you may find it very funny today. And when you have talkies and if you are surprised, you will say, oh. Now, there is a difference when you are acting purely through your body and when you are involving, body with dialogues. So, the performance changes. Now, Neecha Nagar, when you look at Neecha Nagar and you find it theatrical. Now, what is happening with this theatrical is, when you see a lot of films like Sikandar, there is a beautiful film, Sikandar. So Sikandar will speak in a very theatrical language. Oh, you have come, aao puru tum aao, okay, something like that. But in 50s, it was changing. Now, why it was happening in 1930s and 40s? Obviously, people from theatre came, and moreover, when it was a time when people were experimenting with theatre, people from theatre to cinema, and this Parsi theatre was at its prime, so that acting style was slightly exaggerated and things like that. So this is how this, but if you look at the film, it has got a wonderful story, beautiful framing, good direction, and obviously there is a concern. Now, when you talk about 1930s and 1930s, 40s, and up till the mid of 1950s also. Now, obviously, Phalke was there, so he must have had a production company. The name of that production company was Phalke Films, later on, which was converted into Hindustani Film Company. Then you have Madan's Theatre Limited, you have Maharashtra Film Company, you have Indo-British Film Company, you have Lotus Film Company, you have National Film Company, you have Kohinoor Film Company, you have United Pictures, Sharda Film Company, Ranjit Film Company, you have Associated Film, Journal Picture Corporation, and many others also. Now, there are two phases basically if you look at. So, one phase is when we were working up till the talkies. Okay, there were like Phalke Films, Madan later on also came in talkie era also. In fact, the second talkie film was of Madan only, had this Alamara had not been there, then the first film could have been from Madan Theatres, the first talkie film. Then you have Maharashtra Film Company, which is obviously connected to Baburao Painter. Then you have, look, all these names that you are seeing, all the production companies that I have taken names so far, they were big production companies, they were big film studios, and they were churning out reasonable number of films, and those films were not only recovering their money, but they also critically acclaimed also. Now, once we have reached up till talkies, after that you have some other studios which did very well in the era of talkies, like Bombay talkies, like Sagar Movie Tone, Prabhat Studio. I'll be talking about Prabhat Studio, Neo Theatre, Vadia Movie Tones, Minerva Movie Tones, Kardar Production, Raj Kamal Kala Mandir, Jhanak Jhanak Teri Baje Payaliya, V Shantaram, and many more. Now, if you remember, I've just said that there are two phases when we talk about studio. One is like from the beginning till the time talkies came into existence. Then I talked about from talkies till the time we got independence, or maybe up till 1955, like Raj Kamal Kala Mandir was active till 1955, V Shantaram, and you must know about V Shantaram. Now, each studio that I am talking about right now can be one entire lecture. It can be one entire lecture. What like Raj Kamal Kala Mandir can be one entire lecture. When I talk about V Shantaram, how he changed the very grammar of filmmaking in India, the close-up shot, the candid, the frames that he was using, the meaning that he was projecting, and all that. So there will be one special lecture where I'll be talking about each studio separately. Now, remember that by the time we got independence, obviously 1 year later, which makes it 1948, Film Division of India. Now, here is a very interesting fact. When India got independence, there was no official film unit to capture any official thing at that point of time. Whatever is being captured of 1947 related to hosting the flag and everything, this was by a private agency, because there was some agency which was dissolved in 1946, 1947 we got independence, and the agency that was dissolved was reconstituted in 1948, and this is how Film Division of India came into existence. Then we have Central Board of Film Certification, which came into existence in 1951. Now, all these things that we are looking at, I'll be talking about not only films, but I will also be talking about the characteristics of that particular time frame. Now, if you look at this era, which is like post-independence, which is post-independence, then 1950s and 1960s. Till the end of 1960s. This is considered as the golden era of Hindi film industry, and this is the only era which is actually transcending not into one but into two eras, two decades. So there are a lot of interesting things happening with this particular time frame. Now, before I jump into talking about the golden era of Hindi film industry, which is like post-independence, 1950s, and then till the end of 1960s, I would like to answer one very important question which many of my students have asked, and now I take this chance to explain them also, and other can also benefit from this question. Now, they say that if we have such a strong setup of studios, or like I have talked about so many studios, that is just the tip of the iceberg. There were like as many as 100 or 150 studios collectively during that point of time. Now, what is happening with these studios? Like by the 1947 and 4 or 5 years before that, we got to know that we will be getting independence. Now there were a lot of financiers who were into business with Britishers. Now they had an intuition that they might not last very long. Now these are the men with money, so they started looking for the places where they can invest. Now film being upfront and the most vulnerable medium, these financiers started approaching a lot of studios. Now studios had a fixed ecosystem in which they were producing maybe 2 films, 4 films, like Prabhat Studio was churning out good number of films which were social relevant also. And when these people went to these studios, they refused to take any financial help, because it was not only the money that was coming in, a lot of intrusion, a lot of poking was also coming in, and they had their fixed system of working which they did not want it to disturb. Now when studios did not accept it, then who was the weakest link in this entire equation? You will be surprised. They were actors. Actors were the weakest link. So they said, okay, you have been working on a salary pattern, we will give you a fixed amount which is like 5 times or 10 times more than what you are asking. Now when actors started breaking from this equation, these actors on the basis of their personal contact started breaking other people in the equation, like technicians, sound recorders, cameramen, and everyone. And this is how studios gradually started losing or started falling short on their ecosystem. And by the time 1950s, majority of the studios, there are other reasons also, this was the one that I thought that I must tell you, there are other reasons also. Now after this, once they started breaking, if I ask you one very simple question, give me the names of actors from studio era, I'm sure many of us will not be able to answer this question. But what you remember is Raj Kapoor, Dilip Kumar, Devanand, and this is how the golden era starts, and which is like 1947 onwards, as late as 1969, or yeah, we'll talk about that era in our coming lecture. I hope you enjoyed this video. The information must have been very useful to you. I hope to see you again. Thank you very much.